Hello, welcome to another episode of Decentralounge, which is brought to you by Global Stake, your institutional, truly decentralized bare metal staking service provider. And today we're excited to have two wonderful guests on the show, Freddy Murillo and Christian Nunez from AnChain.AI. AnChain.AI is a pioneering blockchain analytics company, which is at the forefront of leveraging AI to bolster web security. Freddy Murillo, serving as the head of BD at AnChain.AI, brings over 2 decades of expertise in customer service, partnership sales, and BD experience. His remarkable ability to lead high-level volume sales, as well as additional teams, and achieve significant KPIs in each of his past roles has been crucial to helping drive AnChain's current success and growth. Joining him is also Christian Nunez, the head of partnerships at AnChain.AI. Christian's role is pivotal in steering the company's expansion in the private sector. This includes both enterprise as well as sales and education aspects. His deep understanding of the Web3 security landscape plays a significant role in achieving AnChain.AI's mission to secure the digital frontier. Together, they're part of a team committed to revolutionizing blockchain security in general, and we're excited to just get some of their insights around the innovations they're bringing to the rapidly evolving field. Excited to have both of you gentlemen on today.
Yep, likewise. Thank you for having us.
Of course, of course. So let's just take a step back. I'd love for each of you to introduce yourselves and give us kind of your story. What led you into the Web3 AI kind of space? Christian, go on ahead and kick us off.
Yep, definitely. I guess where can we start, right? I'm always trying to think of exactly the first time that I got introduced to just Bitcoin in general. It was in high school. One of my friends was trading CSGO skins for Bitcoin. That was about 10 years ago, but I actually like to say that I started my work in the Web3 space about 7 years ago, where I was working as an analyst at a VC firm specifically focused on artificial intelligence. However, doing a lot of research into just like AI models or even the hardware to power AI models, I came across sort of like the SHA-256 algorithm, came across sort of like Bitcoin mining hardware, and sort of fell down the rabbit hole through there. My most sort of notable experience was bringing blockchain solutions and proof of concepts to the innovation lab at Salesforce, where I had the opportunity to work directly with the chief feature officer on Salesforce's 2030 strategy, and essentially analyzing emerging technologies. And my specific focus was whether or not blockchain technology was going to be a pivotal technology, and how would it integrate across different sort of like platforms and systems, such as that of like 5G, IoT, autonomous vehicles, etc. So that's really where my journey began. And today I'm at the crosshairs of both AI and Web3, securing the space, building models, to essentially move the industry forward.
Nice, love it. Freddy, what about you?
Yeah, my experience is a little different than what Christian's experience was. I spent most of my career in the IoT space, telecommunications specifically. And I was part of some of the teams that brought on the very first smartphones, the very first SIM card in a traffic light, in a medicine bottle, whatever it is, right? So we were doing a lot of crazy things at the beginning of this IoT boom we had about a decade ago, actually 2 decades ago now. Wow. So I spent most of my career in telecommunications and IoT, focusing on account management, business development. Worked with some pretty cool teams there, Lockheed Martin, Coca-Cola, to name a few there. And I didn't really start my crypto journey until about 2015, 16, right around the time whenever Coinbase first started doing their learning rewards. And I just kind of fell down that rabbit hole of how does this work, how does that work, the possibility of this and that, and so on. And it really blew my mind. It got to the point where that's all I could talk about. I'm sure I annoyed my friends with everything that I talked about there, but it also got to the point where I got to incorporate my family into it. So I have a family. I'm from Mexico. My family lives in the high up mountains in the village somewhere. No access to financial instruments or anything like that. So they've been using Bitso for a very long time, and I've been sending them Bitcoin, Ethereum for a while now, and that's kind of how I'm able to get money to family across the world, as opposed to going through your normal MoneyGram or Western Union, which then they'll have to drive down a hill, down the mountain, and all this other stuff. So I've seen what crypto can kind of do for people in those countries who don't have access to tools, financial instruments, toys, because a lot of the time now we're developing toys on the blockchain, or at least I consider them toys, similar to what we do here at AnChain. But yeah, I started around then. At one point, I decided, hey, this is what I want to make my career from now on. I want to do a pivot, and it was tough at first. Started with like volunteering for programs, so part of the first cohort, the Polygon Advocate program, where I got to meet with the Polygon team on a weekly basis, onboard community members, give talks in my local area here, and tell people about Matic and how everything worked. Founded a Infinite Star Studios, which is a small blockchain gaming studio, where we built out metaverse experiences, specifically in Decentraland, for companies like Samsung, Polygon, Arc Blockchain, Phantasma. And then Coinbase gave me the opportunity to join their team. So I was on the Coinbase wallet team for a while before the mass layoff happened. But my experience has kind of been all over the place. I've worked for DAOs, again, like I mentioned, Coinbase, huge NFT fan, community contributor. And now I'm here at AnChain, leading the herd business development here, focusing on AI and crypto analytics, which is, and I tell this to everybody, which is not something that I knew I had a passion for until I got here, right? Saving people from losing their hard-earned money to bad actors, criminals, things like that, and kind of saving the day in a lot of ways for people, and kind of gives you that good feeling that we all need every once in a while. So yeah, that's my experience there in a nutshell.
Love it. I appreciate the backstory for both of you. It's always funny how anytime you meet somebody who's in crypto and Web3, it always starts similarly with, I had a friend who's doing something with Bitcoin. We all made fun of him, and now here I am today. So I should have listened to him a long time ago. So I do love it. But to set a quick primer then for going into the conversation, this next bull run, there's going to be a lot of buzzwords. Obviously, one of them is AI. So can both of you kind of describe, why AnChain.AI? What's like the core mission of the company? And then more specifically, how is it advancing both blockchain and AI, so that they're not separate buzzwords, but how is all this kind of interconnected?
Yep, happy to go first here and pass you the baton, Freddy. But so within sort of AnChain.AI, what we're doing with AI models is we have a few sort of patented algorithms and sort of technologies, right? The first one being we are able to assign risk scores to addresses and transactions that are happening on chain. So by providing sort of this level of intelligence to teams, ecosystems, developers, even MetaMask users, we're able to essentially give them a confidence score of, hey, don't do this, or if you are going to do this, act accordingly. We're flagging it as a red flag. User beware, right? That's one on one aspect. The other side of that coin is providing this level of intelligence to digital asset service providers, essentially anyone that's engaged in some sort of on-ramp or off-ramp sort of business model, right? So we're able to sort of bring compliance to these teams and essentially flag, adversaries, hackers, terrorist group, organizations, et cetera, that have been sort of flagged on some sort of government-based database, whether that's a sanctions list, whether that's OFAC, darknet market, sort of on-chain activity, the list sort of goes on. So that's sort of like the first aspect. The second one is we have a specific sort of model that allows you to essentially expedite an investigation on a series of transactions. So we're able to sort of start with a wallet address, give our model sort of a time range. You can think of this as like a ChatGPT prompt, and basically asking it, hey, show me from this point in time to X date, if this sort of address has used any sort of liquidation point. And liquidation points are essentially exchanges where they can off-ramp on-chain value into hard fiat, which then becomes sort of untraceable. Or again, on the flip side of that is we can sort of start with an address and ask our model what sort of addresses has funded this wallet. So that's sort of two ways of how we're using AI within sort of like the security landscape. And Freddie, don't know if I'm missing anything here.
No, yeah, you're definitely hitting it on the money. One thing I would add is both Christian and I are number one, of course, firm believers in what we're doing here, and AI, of course, as well. But one thing that we hear a lot of is when it comes to AI is this bad, I guess, stigma of AI is going to take over certain jobs. It's going to do this for people. It's going to do that for people. And I think one thing that AnChain does really well is kind of combine Web3, blockchain, and AI to the point where we don't think it's going to take over the task of an investigator, an AML, or compliance team of doing their actual job, but it's going to make it easier for them, right? So using some of the tools that Christian mentioned, you know, and just to backtrack a little bit, normally when you're doing your investigations, you're clicking on all these different wallets and going down this rabbit hole of trying to figure out where liquidation points are, where certain money is going, things like that. But using our AI models with a couple of clicks, it basically just maps out every single interaction that this wallet has had for you. So it basically makes it a lot easier for investigators to follow the money, for lack of a better term there, right? Look for those liquidation points and understand exactly what risk is involved with transacting with some of these bad actors. And then on the flip side, as Christian was mentioning, we're also smart contract security experts. We're probably the only ones in the industry with a smart contract AML investigation tool, which is being used by a lot by the U.S. government currently. And one of the AI features within that tool is number one, the tracing of these transactions as well, but then also the ability to audit your own smart contract. So again, taking AI and making a human's job easier, right? As opposed to having to pay, a company hundreds of thousands of dollars for them to give you that stamp of paper on your paper or whatever, saying that you've been audited, right? Using a tool like ours and using AI, it just makes your job a lot easier. So, again, I think we do a great job of kind of combining the two when it comes to blockchain and AI, and firmly believe in what we're doing here for sure.
Yep. And I guess just to quickly backtrack and provide context, right? So we serve both the public sector and the government sector on essentially providing intelligence solutions, compliance solutions, or risk management solutions to the space. So a lot of the tools and softwares that we have created is around sort of like investigations, intelligence work, and then security, right? And the big sort of point here is for teams to be proactive in terms of analyzing all transactions that are happening within their smart contracts or their ecosystem, and then getting pinged via alerts, via sort of like risk scores on addresses and so on, so that they can actually have their finger on the pulse of what is happening, right? We've in 2022, about $4 billion were hacked out of ecosystems. And when we sort of did a deep dive into how quick were these teams to respond to those hacking events, the average time to detect the event was about a week, which is like not an industry standard by any means.
Too long.
In the big general consensus outside of Web3, like just imagine you live in this mansion and it took you a week to find out that you just got like all of your goods stolen, right? While you were in this sort of like home, right? You put that sort of in a perspective of you managing billions of dollars of assets under management through tokens, through in-game currencies, users, etc. That's not good. So that's sort of just the average to detect. The average to actually patch was 30 days. So even after you detect it, like your doors are still wide open for any sort of engagement, for hackers to continue to attack that vulnerability. So we took it upon ourselves to sort of like try to fix this problem. And today we have a solution that allows you to detect these events in a matter of like seconds, if not minutes. and we have a series of playbooks of how to sort of like go upon these events when they do happen, if they happen.
Just a quick follow-up on that. So it sounds like you guys do this at a lot of different scales, because you talk about investigators, maybe the individuals like the Zach XBTs of the world, but then also you're working with public companies and governments. So I'm assuming this scales up for like B2B kind of applications. Is it something that can be used or implemented in a way that allows for advanced detection because of this AI? Because that's, at least it seemed like you alluded to that, Christian. So just curious to learn a little bit more about how it works and how it could actually stop some of these bad actors. It sounds really interesting.
Yep, definitely. So what we have a sort of a tool that listens to every single event that's happening at the smart contract level. What we're essentially listening to is functions within the contract. There are specific functions that if they were to be called, it can set up a series of flags, right? For example, private keys being changed. Why, right? What's going on? A massive amount of liquidity withdrawal, right? Something that sort of like alerts a specific threshold, right? Let's say you're managing $10 million under management within that sort of like DeFi protocol, whatever it might be. If 6 million moves today out, 60% of your funds are out. Like, why, right? So it's us being sort of proactive. There's still that human component where like we're creating automations, and I guess the concept of automation would fall under sort of like AI, but we're creating sort of like these automated workflows that allows for the system to ping you. We still have to set up those rules and the logic behind it. That's where the human component comes into place, and that's essentially where like we're merging like our cognitive function with that of AI to essentially have that advanced like threat detection, right? So that's essentially what it is. But we can sort of like listen to many different events. Like we can listen to the Tether smart contract, and every time that Tether adds a blacklist address to its protocol, ping us, right? Then we can sort of analyze that specific address. Why has it been blacklisted by Tether? And then we can go into our models and then risk it for the entire ecosystem, right? For any sort of like EVM compatible ecosystem that can essentially engage with that specific address. So that's where we're heading with these tools essentially.
Yeah. So we're basically taking all of our tools and kind of bringing them together into this one center. So imagine everything Christian just said, and then you needing more information on a specific transaction or a function call or whatever it is, you would go to our smart contract tool from that point on, or to our CISO tool from that point on. So I think we're doing a really good job of kind of mixing everything as far as what a cybersecurity department really in any Web3 company might need. But yeah.
I think one thing that's worth flagging from what you both have just said there is institutions, hedge funds, VCs, et cetera, even like custodians want to make sure they're OFAC compliant. But you mentioned something a little bit ago that I kind of want to circle back around and highlight. In the broad spectrum of the media, there's a lot of misunderstanding and people who think that crypto is being utilized heavily by bad actors versus fiat currencies throughout the world. You mentioned you're already working with governments. So I'm curious your perspective because of these capabilities. I highly personally doubt that a lot of that could happen since so much can be traced and tracked, whereas paper fiat, actual in person cannot. So out of curiosity, your current customer base, if you're able to elaborate on it, how much of it is starting to come more so from governments, from actual law enforcement? How are they utilizing it? How are they wanting to work with you guys? And are you seeing actually an uptick in not only just awareness, but people that are actually becoming proficient in it? If that question kind of makes sense.
Definitely. And I hope in the next sort of like 10 seconds, we have a guest, a surprise guest joining the show here, and it's Senator Elizabeth Warren, right? So we in fact today we actually launched our Web3 risk report, right? So I'm not quite sure if it covers specifically the amount of or the use of cryptocurrencies as illicit activity compared to that of cash. The reality is that like Bitcoin, it's like once you create a transaction on Bitcoin, any new user, personally, the way I see it is there is a fine line between that of Big Brother and the use of Bitcoin or any sort of cryptocurrency. The reason why is because the minute that you interact with a public, transparent ledger, that sort of information is going to be timestamped for the rest of humanity, right? Or at least until these servers are up, right? And that sort of piece of information, of intelligence, is very valuable when we're talking about track and tracing, when we're talking about the correlation between a financial transaction and that of the value or service that just took place, right? Where we haven't been able to do that with fiat. Fiat is, sort of if you want to launder funds or money, you're going to do it using fiat. You're going to use it with a commodity that cannot be tracked and traced, right, at any given point in time. And that's essentially what cash is. Cash is sort of like the most used commodity to sort of like, to fund financial crime or to fund any sort of illicit activity. So with that being said, because of the nature of the blockchain and it being a public ledger, it's such a like helpful tool for law enforcement to be able to sort of like crack down crime, especially when we're tracing funds to public entities that do KYC, that then can actually give us intelligence on a specific user. Then from that user, that becomes a lead. Then we can interrogate them with law enforcement. Then we can start building a story and a narrative and figure out exactly like, whatever sort of crime we're trying to sort of crack. So we're seeing sort of like huge uptick within law enforcement of finally realizing a lot of crime that's happening within cities, most of the time, whether it's like drug-related crime, whether it's like murder cases, ransom, kidnapping, there may or may not be a cryptocurrency transaction that took place. And if we're able to gather that intelligence that some sort of crypto transaction actually took place, that's probably the best lead that we have today from a sophistication level of taking down crime, where we can sort of, go from that lead and then figure out exactly what happened. Which before, like when you think of like how was law enforcement taking down crime before, it was very, very difficult to sort of follow the funds. And if you're able to follow the money, then you can, crack the perpetrator, whatever, and so on. So yeah, it's probably like one of the most advanced tools that law enforcement is using today to take down real crime. And by real, I mean like physical crime, like non sort of like cyber crime.
Yeah.
I'm curious, as they follow the money, is there a way that they're able to track the location, like the actual IP address of where this cryptocurrency transaction is happening?
Yep, definitely. There's many different ways of like social engineering this thing or de-engineering it. So that would be one, finding IP locations. There is sort of a gray area because of the use of VPNs. But like using ENS, sort of, the naming service, the Ethereum naming service, like, the dumb criminals make a post on X or Twitter with their ENS. Next thing you know, like they also did some other sort of like crime, and were able to sort of like link them through like social networks. That's one. Freddy, don't know.
I mean, any open source intelligence that's available out there. Our investigation team is really good at tracking down and gathering data on who's interacted with a specific wallet, what wallet belongs to who. So, using a lot of that data, we're able to add labels to these wallets. And when law enforcement does their investigation, and it can lead to, or sometimes does lead to, a wallet that we've already labeled, that obviously helps them with their case. So this isn't a country that I can't really touch, or this is not in my jurisdiction, or whatever it is. So really anywhere we can get open source information, our investigation team, um, yeah, there's definitely a lot of different ways. And then one other thing that I wanted to add there, a lot of what Christian touched on is a 1000% accurate. I would say that's more towards the federal level, though. What we are also seeing an uptick in is things like pig butchering, where somebody's grandfather was tricked into a relationship with a girlfriend in the UK or in Africa, when it's really, some guy in China behind a computer, and he convinces this person to send him $100,000, $200,000, right? So those kind of crimes, which are really sad to see, are another level that another uptick that we're seeing in these types of crimes, and another level that we're seeing where law enforcement is looking to understand more of how this works and what's going on. Because up until this point, like, nobody knew, how to track this stuff. Like, even now we run into law enforcement or agents where it's just, okay, well, what's a MetaMask wallet? How does blockchain work? What's Bitcoin? Like, how can I find this person, right? So I think we have seen an uptick, but I think there's still a lot of work to do with helping, I guess, educate a lot of our law enforcement on how to fight these crimes and how to track these things down. But yeah.
Yep. And just to add to that, the rise of dating apps and financial gurus on social media is leading to, not to say that it's a bad thing. It's not. I truly believe that, markets become more efficient as they grow. But that's one of the biggest sort of crimes that we're seeing alongside these markets growing, right? The pig butchering, the romance
scams,
and where some of like Freddy's and my work lies is landing these international partnerships where we can work with foreign governments to assist domestic law enforcement agents on these cases, right? So we will be working with, a county department here, and they're having communications with a specific government agency in Africa, and they're working together to take down someone that literally, like, as long as they have a phone and access to like an app, such as like that of Tinder or Bumble or Instagram, X, whatever, that alone is enough for them to sort of, do this whole like, criminal event or activity, and reap millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands from a victim here that is alone and is just looking to, speak to someone or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And then just to add one more thing, just to give everybody an idea of how much, for example, the US government is fighting against a lot of this crime. The US government is I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, number 5 Bitcoin holder in the entire world, right? And this is just from recovering funds or Bitcoin from, known gangs, scammers, hackers, things like that, where, there is no way to return the funds. But yeah, just to give you guys an idea and a broader perspective there, the US government is heavily at work with trying to fight a lot of this crime and trying to recover a lot of these funds for people and themselves, of course. But
I really hope that your company, which I know you guys are, other Web3 native ecosystems, but more importantly, your customers, the end users, are sharing this feedback back to our regulators, specifically in the US, so that there is insightful regulation coming, and not obviously what we're all thinking of, regulation that makes absolutely no sense and prevents this industry from growing. Because tools like you guys and what you've just shared is pivotal and a perfect explanation of how this modern system of finance is way better than the one that's currently operating around the world with the euro, dollar, et cetera, fiat that just can't be traced. So appreciate what you guys are doing.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
And we are moving towards that direction, right? There's a public Forbes article out there that discloses sort of our partnership with the United States SEC. And, to sort of summarize the article, because it is public information, we were hired to sort of create a tool that can break down the learning curve to understand DeFi transactions. The problem with it is, and even for someone that considers themselves a veteran in the space, and I'm not technical in the terms of I can't code, but have enough technical jargon and experience under my belt to understand like how technology works, so on and so forth. Like the way that the space moves is incredibly fast. There's a ton of geniuses out there, very technical individuals that are creating zero knowledge proofs, roll-ups, try to sort of sit someone who understands policies and understands sort of like diplomacy and US history, and have them understand like what a roll-up is and why sort of like, this technology is way more efficient for scaling blockchain or data integrity compared to that of Ethereum, right? And like, that's just difficult within itself. So that's sort of like what I see as one of the biggest problems in terms of regulation, from us being sort of like Web3 natives and trying to sort of have the US government accept this technology, accept sort of DeFi protocols. But then on the flip side, we're seeing the amount of scams, we're seeing sort of like the inconsistency or the lack thereof of Web3 teams not prioritizing security protocols, not prioritizing security software. It's very, very difficult still to convince government agencies that we're mature enough to, completely adopt the space, right? And the truth of the matter is that we're still not there. It's something that we're working towards. I do believe from a general consensus, like we are behind from that of other nations like France or the EU that's passing like this MiCA regulation. But that's sort of like where personally I'm at in terms of like juggling, trying to create that balance of like, where are we realistically as a space, and where is our representatives and their understanding of it. And a lot of it is that learning curve. And that is something that we're hoping to sort of like, help create sort of that seamless transition of Web2 ideologies, financial system, how does that work, to what we're building out here in Web3. And it's still very difficult because of, again, the learning curve and the amount of illicit actors that sometimes make a bigger noise, right? The fall of FTX, that totally destroyed a lot of our credibility. Especially someone that was like meeting with government regulators on a daily basis, tooting the horn of, yes, everything that we're doing is sort of like, has gone through sort of compliance structures and yada, yada, yada. And it was all like smoke and mirrors, right? They're using, I forgot which sort of like software accounting that is usually used for small businesses, and an enterprise of that size was like QuickBooks, I think.
QuickBooks, yeah.
Like, like the fact that we're still there, we definitely need to train our representatives and our compliance officers of, how to properly secure this space.
100%. Well, Christian, Freddy, pleasure having you on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. For those that are listening, how can they follow you? How can they reach out to you both on social media as well as the company?
Yeah, so definitely follow us on LinkedIn. AnChain.AI is our LinkedIn page there. Both Christian and myself, you'll be able to find there as well, or just looking me up by my name, Christian by his name as well. But yeah, that'd probably be the best way to communicate with us. Definitely, we're up for conversations. We both Christian and I consider ourselves degens, as they say. So we love what we do. We love the Web3 space. We love really everything crypto and blockchain. So if anybody has any questions about what we do here, or just wants to have a chit chat about Web3, I'm pretty sure both Christian and I are definitely up for something like that for sure. So yeah, looking forward to some people reaching out.
Love it. So definitely reach out to them on X as well as LinkedIn or their website. Thank you both again for coming on, and we will see everyone next time on Decentral Lounge. Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Awesome.
Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all for having us.